And I just remember sitting there. I was like, if I got pulled over right now, I was like, one, like legally, I can't say why I'm here because I'm so tied up in non-disclosure agreements. Like, I have no idea where my ID is or my wallet or any of my belongings. Like, I have no proof of anything. I have no idea whose car this is. That was like my cover story. And then when you go, you get there day one, they come in your room, they lock you in a hotel room, basically. And they come get your phone, they get your wallet, they get all your, and you don't get that back. You film for 2 months. If I had to wake up tomorrow and do that, it's like, there's just no fucking way. Like, I'm doing the thing. It's like, you know, when I talk to other people thinking about getting in this career, I'm like, if you can picture yourself doing literally anything else, go do that. It's a better job. Period.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Money, Loyalty, Legacy. My name is Matt.
And you're with the boy, the champ. And today we have a very special guest, winner of Top Chef Season 15, a culinary director overseeing Chicago restaurants Rosemary and Boulevard Steakhouse, a proud Southside Chicago native, and a dear friend. Please welcome Chef Joe Flamm.
Hey,
Yo. What's up, brother?
Good to be here, boys.
Nice. You know, right before we really get into nitty gritty, you know, we did some boxing earlier, right?
Yeah, sort of shit.
You did great. No, you did great. I was telling Matt real quick, and I was like, you know, because Matt does martial arts and things like that. You know, I kept saying the cross was a monster, right? So, like, just go like this with your hand. Like, higher up, though. Like, turn your elbow in like that. But, like, stick your fingers out, because, like, you like that. Now, sprinkle salt on there. Hey. What do you think about that guy?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's one of those things where it's like that's one of those guys where you're like, how did you pull this off? How did you become like this famous for doing nothing? And you know, I know there's a million idiots out there, but you see this dude in like his tight t-shirts and his stupid glasses, like just sprinkling salt on steaks and like slicing them like an asshole. And you're just like, and I'm sure he's a nice guy. You know what I mean? I'm sure he's a great guy. I'm happy that, you know, his restaurants do well. I'm here for everybody to win. But you're just like, it's one of those things where you're just like, why are we working so fucking hard at this? This asshole's bouncing salt off his forearms, and you know has 5 million followers or whatever on Instagram, and is hanging out with Conor McGregor in Dubai.
Yeah, right. No, but all jokes aside, I wanted to mess with you a little bit, but you really have a cross, and I was telling Matt with the boxing thing, it was very impressive, you know. So.
Well, you know, it was, first of all, that was super fun, but it's funny, you know, like for me, it's like, this is something that's newer to me, but it's like when you're just being across from someone who like actually does it, like, you know, yourself, where it's like, you can just tell, like, you have that intensity where it's just like, you can't turn it off. You're just like in it.
Yeah.
And it's like super, like it gets you super amped because it's like just like looking at you. It's like you're just thinking, and I'm like kind of like, is he gonna like fucking hit me? Like, you know what I mean? Because it's just like the way you move, where it's just like, you know, it's like you get into that mode. It's kind of like me. It's like you get into a kitchen. It's like you're in that mode. You mean that intensity levels instantly. You're like, okay, it's go time.
Right.
We are going now. Mm-hmm. Like and you know, I always think I would tell people like, I don't think I'm that intense of a person. And like, you know, one of my old sous chefs, he was like, you were like one of the most intense people I've ever met in my life. He's like, you just surround yourself with absolute psychos. He's like, so that you seem less intense because like all your friends are crazy intense people. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, I was like, whatever that says about me. But you know, so it's like, it's always one of those things that like, I think I just like see and I appreciate in people where I'm just like, oh yeah, okay.
I mean,
like you're a little bit crazy right now, and I like it, you know?
And you were coming out with it, which was great, you know, and talking about intensity, you know, you were at the World Series of a chef show per se, right?
Right.
How was that intensity with that show being on it, and how much did that bring out of you?
So it's a weird, different intensity. So with that show, one of the things that's really weird about it is that you're like, when you go, you get there day one, right? And day one you go in, you can't tell anybody where you went, right? So nobody knows where you are. You like, my wife knew, a couple close friends, people at work who had to know, but everybody else, you make up a cover story and you say, hey, my cover story was, my chef at the time I was working for, he had another restaurant in Florida. And I was like, hey, the Florida restaurant's not doing too well. They're sending me down there for 2 months. I got to help reconcept it, help them out with some things, get it up and, kind of back running. And so that was like my cover story. And then when you go, you get there day one, they come in your room, they lock you in a hotel room basically. And they come get your phone, they get your wallet, they get all your, and you don't get that back. You film for 2 months. So if you go home first, like if you're out first challenge, first day, you don't get that phone back for 2 months.
Oh, wow.
So you're lock and key for 2 months, no matter what.
Why?
Because otherwise people would know.
True.
A big part of that show is like, you're in $1 million NDAs and all this stuff is people not finding out who won, right? And so if if you went and then you came back right away, people would be like, oh, okay, you didn't do very well. So everybody goes home on the same day. Everybody gets their stuff back same day. And so they don't want you to have any contact with the outside world because they want to build that intensity. So it's like, you can't watch TV, you can't read a newspaper, you can't, go online, you can't do any of those things for 2 months. Like, unless you get kicked off, and then, you can kind of live a somewhat weird, normal life like you're in witness protection. But so, like, the intensity of being cut off from the outside world for 2 months is really weird. Because it'd be like, okay, you can make a phone call, and, like, before you go, they kind of, like, bullshit you about it, right? They're like, oh, yeah, you need to make a call, you make a call. You're going to check some emails? Yeah, don't worry about it, chef. You'll be great. And then you get there, you're like, it's been 4 days, I haven't made a phone call. And you're like, hey, can somebody text my wife and just tell her I'm not dead? And so then you'd be able to make a phone call and it'd be 10 minutes on camera, on speakerphone, on a producer's phone, and you can talk about what was going on. So you just had it was like, hey, how are you? And then it's like on camera, so you can't talk any shit. So you can't be like, oh, how's my ma? She being fucking crazy? You know what I mean? Like, how's your ma? You know what I mean? Like, you can't say anything about your friends or your family. And so, and it's like, that's half your conversation with your significant other. So it's like, it's just really weird. You're really disconnected. And the only people you have to connect with is the people working on the show. And then, the people who you're competing against. So for me, it was I took that intensity as, I was like, all right, I'm here. This is crazy that I'm here. You know what I mean? Like, this is whatever. I think there's 20 seasons now, but it's usually like 10,000 people apply, 15 people make it. So it's like, I'm one of the 15 people that's here. This is nuts. I'm just gonna, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna win. I don't think I'm gonna win, but like, I'm gonna try to make the most out of this. I wanna go as far as I can. I wanna experience as much of this as I can because it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. You know what I mean? This isn't like, I'm not a TV guy. I'm a guy who, you know what I mean? Like, 10 years before that was living in my parents' basement with my best friend because we were line cooks so we couldn't afford an apartment. You know what I mean? So it was like, I'm just going to make the most of it. I'm going to try to connect with people. Like, I love meeting people. I love connecting with people. So that was kind of just like my way going into it. But it's just because you have no outside, it's just everything was concentrated. So it's like, it's all you had to think about. That first night before the first elimination challenge, it's like, I'm going to bed in a IKEA bunk bed that's a foot shorter than me with 3 dudes in a room who I've met yesterday. I know nothing about. And I'm like, just in my head, like, my dish sucks. My dish sucks. I'm going home tomorrow. This is going to be so embarrassing. I'm going to be the first one sent home. Like, I'm not going to be able to tell anybody about this. Like, all my boys are going to be dogging me. They're going to be getting so much shit in Chicago. Like, because one of the old chefs I worked for, she won it. So I was like, oh, fuck. Like, Steph's going to think I'm an asshole. Like, all the I remember just laying there like 4 in the morning or whatever time it was because they don't put any clocks in the house and you don't have a phone. So it's like, you have no idea what's going on. Finally, I was like, all right, you know what? Like, there's nothing else you can do. Go out tomorrow and like cook your best. And if there's 14 better dishes than yours in this house, what can you do? Mm-hmm. Like, you're a good cook. Like, just go cook your food. Right. And so, luckily I survived day one and, made a run at it. But, it was just like, and you saw people, we all are intense people and chefs. You know what I mean? We work hard. We work intensely. We work under fast-paced conditions. It's a grind. It's long hours. But, we have our teams. We have our supports. We have these other things. But you saw people where it's like, especially like when people like, if they got in the bottom, and it's like they got in the bottom once, it's like they got that thought in their head. It's like almost like that thing, like if you think you're going to fall, you're going to fall. And it's like you would see people, it's like they got to that bottom that one time and they were just like, you're like, oh, you're dead already. Like, you know what I mean? It's like you're not like, you know what I mean? It's you're going home. Like,
And you won the first challenge, correct?
I won the first quick fire.
Right.
And then the first challenge I was like in the middle somewhere. But yeah, so it was like, okay, all right, you know what I mean? Got my feet under me a little bit. And then I think I had a good second challenge. And the third one, I almost fucked that one up. I think it was the third or fourth one. I ended up on the bottom. And it was like, oh, this sucks. And it was like, it was hard, like going to the next challenge. You had to like really, because there's nobody to be like, you know, it's like if it's the three of us, we're in the car on the way to the set to like go film. You're not going to be like, hey man, don't worry about it. You'll do great today.
No, because you don't want that.
Right. And like, I, you know, honestly, I would do that for people because I was like, I would see them and I'm like, I can't just like watch you like about to fucking jump off this cliff. Like, you know what I mean? But like everybody else, you know, a lot of people are just like, oh yeah, you know, really cooked like shit yesterday. Like, you know, and you're just like, so it was like, you know, we called it emotional terrorism. Like, because it was just, they never told you what was going to happen. You never knew what time you're going to wake up. You get in the car and you'd be like, where are we going? And they're like, can't tell you. And so it's just like, it's such a mind fuck that like the intensity is just all around. So it's like, you know, and people are like, oh, is it really that hard? Is it really that intense? It's like, it's so much harder. And it's so much more intense. Like if they showed all the hours of film of it, you'd be like, this is insanity. These days are, you know, and I know you've worked in production. It's like those days are 18 hours long.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like we'd get up at 6 a.m. when they woke us up, and you know, you woke up to a camera. They're just like, hey, and you're like, hey, like what's going on? They're like, I don't know. Just maybe you should get dressed. And you're like, oh, fucking assholes. Like, you know, and so
what was your mindset when you originally like they cut you and then there's like that back room, right? They're like you're like
right.
You can get come back.
So you get cut. Like what happens is like I don't know how much of it I'm supposed to tell, but it's been years, so I don't fucking care.
Tell it all.
So like what happens when you get cut? So like our season was Colorado, and the main spot was Denver. So like they have the nice house in Denver that like you see on TV. It's big and it's pretty, and that's where you live when you're on the show. And when you go to Elimination Challenge, we call it, you know, be like pack your sad bag. You'd have to pack like a bag's worth of shit so that if you didn't come home that night, you at least had some clean clothes to change into when they sent you to the other place. So they had like a hotel that was like a residence in suites, like in like Broomfield, Colorado, which is like a suburb 45 minutes out, like an Oak Brook or a whatever, you know, equivalent here. And so you'd go like live there. And you're still like off the grid, but you have a little freedom. But it's like basically now you have a bunch of chefs on spring break, basically, because you can't work, can't talk to anybody at home. They're giving you $100 a day cash, do whatever you want with. You have nothing to do. And we're a bunch of animals. So it's just like, it's like, okay, let's party. You know what I mean? Like and, you know, we're Colorado. So it's like, you know, it's like, how much drugs can we get? The answer to that question was like an unbelievable amount. But so I was off and, you know, I got kicked off in a quick fire, which was like, you know, it was like I'd won the challenge the night before. It was like Restaurant Wars. They were like the highest of highs. And I was like, it was like, you know, the cartoon character where they're like jumping over the, you know, the big like pit. And it's like they're high above it. They're like, I got it. And then I was like, zoop, like, and so, you know, I get kicked off. And it's like early in the morning. And like I get in this van and they're like really worried about you when you get kicked off. And they're like, are you okay? Like, you're all right? Like, are you know, do you, like, you know, we have people you can call. I'm like, I'm good. She's like, do you need anything? I was like, yes. I was like, do you have my wallet? She was like, yes. I was like, let's go to a liquor store. I was like, I need you to buy me a case of Miller High Life bottles. I had just won 10 grand in a challenge the night before. I go, find the most expensive bottle of whiskey that's in that store. I go, buy it. And I go, buy me a pack of Parliament Light shorts. She was like, it was like 11 a.m. And I'm like, she's like, okay. So she stops, she buys all the. So I walk into the kickoff hotel and I like see, you know, one of the other guys who got kicked off before. He's like, what the fuck are you doing here? And I'm like, oh, I'm done. He's like, that's crazy. I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, what are you going to do? I'm like, drink all this alcohol. Like, you want to hop in? And he was like, yeah. So we sat there. We drank a case of beer, a bottle of whiskey. smoked a pack of cigarettes and talked about, how we got kicked off. And I was like, yeah, whatever. I had a good run. I run Restaurant Wars. I didn't think I'd make it back on. I didn't know if there was going to be a Last Chance Kitchen that year. So it's just kind of like, all right, well, whatever. This is it. I get to sleep in a hotel room. I get to sleep in a bed by my fucking self. You know what I mean? Like, not in a bunk bed. I'm not waking up to a camera tomorrow. Like, and it was my biggest fear going into it is like, oh, getting kicked off. It's like, well, that happened. So then we go back in the Last Chance Kitchen. And it was kind of one of those things for me where I was like, I don't even, like, it's so stressful to be on the show. I was like, I don't even know if I really want to be back on. But then it's like that competitive side comes out of you where it's like, then, they're like, oh, okay, you're cooking heads up against people. And I was like, well, yeah, but like, I'm not going to let this guy beat me. So I'll beat this guy and then somebody else will come and beat me. And then somebody else will come in and like, I don't want to lose them. I'm not going to lose to them. Then you'd win one more. And then it was just kind of like, all of a sudden I was like, if I win one more of these, like I'm back. So I won one more, and then it was like I was back. And then because I got kicked off, it was like, I was like, well, I'm playing with house money now. So I came in super loose. I was like, oh, yeah, shit, yeah, like we're back, baby, let's go. Let's, you know what I mean? And I was just having a ton of fun with it. And then, so, like, just kind of like, they say in baseball, it's like getting hot at the right time. It was like, so I was like, like I was cooking my best food when I needed to cook my best food and like just, ran it straight through the end.
Yeah, which is awesome.
Yeah. And so that was like, but so the crazy thing is, right, so you're lock and key under this. So this happens. So I win. The finale was at the top of Aspen Mountain. So, the chef's table wraps at like the judging at like 11:55 at night. So we're at the top of the mountain in the off season. So they have to get me off the mountain to get me into like interview like this. So it's like a Tuesday night at midnight in Aspen. So I win. There's like the final clip. You can see me winning. Everybody comes out, champagne, cheers. The second after that, they like ran me off this mountain like I was the president being shot. Like they throw me, like I go from like, holy shit, I just won, to being thrown in a gondola, like me and one other person in the pitch dark. It's like a 30-minute gondola ride. So it was like the highest of highs. And I'm just sitting there and it's like, this girl, Maria, who was like one of our handlers, and she was awesome. She's just like we're just like sitting there. She's like, holy shit. She's like, you just like won. I was like, I know, right? Like, what the fuck? Like, she's like, I don't even know what to do. I was like, I don't know what to do. She's like, you want to like scream or something? I was like, yeah. She's like open the windows on the gondola. We're like, oh! And then you go down, throw you this interview. And it's like, by this point, it's like 1 a.m. So I'm like in this interview for an hour, call my wife at like 1:30 in the morning on Tuesday, tell her I won, and like, but that's done. So like now you just won this thing, but it's like, by that point, the only person you're staying with is the person who you just went heads up against for so it's like you're a fighter. Imagine it's like you're the championship belt and they're like, hey, you won. Now you go back to your hotel with the guy you just fought and no one else is there. It's just you two to celebrate your victory.
How awkward is that?
And, luckily, the girl I went up against, she's a South Center too. She's from Hyde Park. And just like, honestly, one of the most just mentally tough people I've ever met. Like this girl, and I mean, she came up through 3 Michelin star kitchens, you know what I mean? It just, as a, female in those kitchens when there were none, it just didn't give a fuck. Like, you know what I mean? So she's a monster. And so we got back there. I just was like, gave her space. You know what I mean? She was upset and like, rightfully so. Like, it was completely emotionally draining. We were on this 2-month ride together. But then, like she called her mom, took a shower, and then, comes out like an hour later with like 2 beers, meets me on the patio, and she was like, hey, congrats. And you know what I mean? Me and her like had a few pops, but it was like really weird because it's like, they're like, oh, what'd you do to celebrate after you won? It's like, nothing. There's like, you weren't allowed to go back with everybody. You weren't allowed to party with everybody. So it was like really weird. And then it's like, that show didn't air. That was like June 5th. The finale aired March 7th of the next year. So you're just like sitting on it. So that was like also a really crazy part of it.
For people that don't know what it's like to have a production around you, cameras, sound guy, wardrobe. I don't know if you had wardrobe and hair and makeup or whatever.
No, they're very psyched to like have you look like.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's not like where they're like, it's like the judges have that.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know what I mean? It's like hey, if we had 45 drinks last night and you're showing up to this quick fire, like you'd be looking like an absolute, bag. They're like, perfect.
I was gonna ask that. Like, you're like, okay, cool. We just partied all night. Now we're on the show, and like, if I'm hurting, I'm hurting.
You're hurting. You're hurting. You'd be, especially at altitude,
right?
So, like, because we all lived in this house together, and then you had like handlers who lived in the house who basically they just babysat you, made sure because like you couldn't leave the house. You couldn't go for a walk, you couldn't go to the store, you couldn't do anything. They made sure you didn't leave. And then some of the production crew stayed in the house, and then it was like, you're just surrounded by cameras from the time you woke up till the time you went to bed, to the point where it's like, and then it's like like those production crews, they work their ass off. Like that is. And I think there was a lot of like just camaraderie from us, like, chefs with them, because we're like, oh, you guys are like a bunch of psychos too. Yeah. Like, you guys are in it, like just grinding. And so we get cool with them. And then, at the end of we get back to the house and we're like, all right, what shots do we need to get for like you guys to leave us the fuck alone? Like you got, like someone be like, all right, you need to talk about this, and then we can wrap it. We're like, great. Because it'd be like 12:30 at this point. We're like, great. We're like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Like, great. So we'd be like, oh, yeah, Ross, you really, shit the bed today, but you're still here, huh? And, like, talk about the three things. And I'd be like, all right, I'm going to bed. And I'd, like, go in my bed with all my clothes on. They'd be like, all right. I'd be like, cool. Here's my microphone. Here's my, you know what I mean? Then we go back downstairs and, like, hammer 4 bottles of rosé. I'd be like, holy shit, we survived another night. It was like, you ever see a movie with Jude Law? It's like Enemy at the Gates, I think, where they're like every night in Stalingrad, they party like it's the last night of their lives. That's kind of the vibe of a Top Chef house. Right. It was like, it's like, we made it back, comrades. You know what I mean? Like, let's get weird.
Did you, when you came back, from the show or back onto the show, I guess the main part or whatever, and you rolled in with the cowboy hat, was that your idea?
No, they were like, so we were in
saloon thing.
We were in Telluride. Right. And so the crazy part, so they all had a flight to Telluride. It was off season, so there's only one flight a day. So they're like, all right, you're going to drive to Telluride. And I'm like, okay. So they're like, me and this other handler, this lady Mira, they're like, because nobody can know you're coming back. Like, because they're super serious about it on that show. There's money at stake. So like, they are like, it is so tight-lipped. It's so by the book. It's so by the rules. Like, they do not fuck around. So they're like, you have to drive. The drive from Denver to Telluride is about 7 hours because it's like corner to corner in the state, through the mountains. It's crazy. So it's me and this woman, Mira, who's originally from Alabama, lives in LA now. We're driving through. They give us some BMW that's like a BMW on set that was like for one of the judges. It's got like jersey plates. You know what I mean? Whatever. Like, I don't even know whose car it is. Driving through, we end up in this small mountain town. We stop for lunch. We get out of the mountain town, and it's a fucking just storm. Like hail, rain, everything. This chick pulls over. She's like, I can't drive in this. She's like, I'm from LA. I don't drive in weather. I was like, well, we're sitting in the mountains. Like, I'm like, the only way through is out. We got to drive through this. And she's like, no. I'm like, well, you got to let me drive. She's like, no, you're not allowed to drive. And I was like, well, what do you want to do here? And so finally she's like, all right, you can drive. You can't tell anyone you drove. You can't, you know what I mean? Like, this is like a big no-no. So I take the car. I'm like, just hammering this thing through the mountains because it's like, you know what I mean? I think at the time I had like a fucking 10-year-old Subaru Forester, you know what I mean, that maybe could do 65 miles an hour. And I'm driving like a $120,000 BMW. So I'm just like absolutely hammer fucking this thing through the mountains. Like, just like 100 miles an hour, just ripping it. And I just remember sitting there. I was like, if I got pulled over right now, I was like, one, like legally, I can't say why I'm here because I'm so tied up in non-disclosure agreements. Like, I have no idea where my ID is or my wallet or any of my belongings. Like, I have no proof of anything. I have no idea whose car this is. I don't know the woman's name who is sitting next to me other than Mira. I don't know her last name. I don't know anything about her. Like, you know what I mean? And I'm like, this is going to be insane. Like, luckily, whatever, we made it out of there. But it was like, so we drove down there. And, you know, there was this really cool old saloon in downtown Telluride. They were like, yeah, this is where it's going to be. And the one director, this guy, Austin, he's like, it'd be really cool if you had a cowboy hat. I was like, yeah, well, I don't have a fucking cowboy hat. Like, I was like, dude, I'm from the fucking south side of Chicago. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I might have like a fucking flat brim socks hat floating around in my bag somewhere. Like, And he had one on, and he was like, "Here, just this is fit." And then they gave me somebody's boots. They were like, they walked around like the production crew. They made me put my foot up next to everyone's foot until who had boots on. And they finally found this big dude. They were like, "Take your boots off." You know what I mean? And I was like, "This is like, what is happening?" So he put his boots on me. They gave me this guy's hat, and I was walking out the cowboy hat. But it was just like one of those. That was probably like as stressful as it was. Like watching it all back was so fun, and like that was. Like besides the episode where like we won it all, like that was the most fun episode because it was like we had a party every week for the episode. So that one I didn't have a party that week because I couldn't let anyone know that I was coming back, and it was just like that went. Like, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it, but like, and I just remember like my phone went nuts. Everybody started. They're like, "Oh, you're fucking back! I know it, baby!" Like, and it was just like one of the coolest things to experience.
When you went through the doors and you had that cowboy hat on, you said there was a director, right? Is he actually directing you? Like, all right, have like a determined look on your face, or walk slow, or was there any kind of direction for this?
So they do stuff where it's like because like a lot of it's shot just kind of like it has to like because the cooks are timed.
Right.
So you have 45 minutes. So once that's rolling, it's rolling, and there's no give there. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? If you're at 45 minutes and you're not plated, tough shit. It's good TV. And so, but like they shot it like a couple times before they brought the other contestants into the bar. So they were like, had me like walk through a few times and then did like a live one for their reaction. And it was like, and they legitimately had no idea I was there, that I was coming back. So it was like, it was really cool to actually like see them be like, what the fuck? Like, so that was a really cool one.
Okay. So you had to, the entire time this episode just going through the motions. You're already back home. You're back to working. You can't tell anybody. I mean, your wife knows
right
at this point until the final show goes that you won. So it's just a bit. You're here and you're not telling anybody.
Right. So I get back.
How hard is that?
Oh, brutal. Right. You know what I mean? Like, and so my wife knows, I take my boss out. I was working for Tony Batuato at the time. And so I took Tony and his wife out to dinner and I told him that I won. And, a couple other people, we kept it pretty close. Like I told my dad, I didn't tell my mom because my mom would fucking tell everybody. You know what I mean? So it's like, he knew, my siblings didn't know. None of my relatives knew. You know what I mean? It was really tight, except for the night I get back, my best friend who lives in Detroit now, he's in town. Like we met working on the line together, so we're up at a Sportsman's Club on like Augusta and Western. We're in the backyard up there, and I hadn't seen anybody in 2 months. So we're out there, we're in the back, and I told him I won. So we're fucking ripping shots, drinking beers, and he's a total maniac. So all these other people start showing up, and like all these other people we know, and you know what I mean. And it's a big like industry hang. And everybody's like, "Oh, Flamm, where the fuck you been?" Like, blah, blah, blah. He's like, "You don't know where he's been? He's been fucking winning Top Chef. That's where the fuck he..." And I'm like, "Dude, you gotta." So, everybody was at that bar that night probably knew, but it was like, otherwise, we kept it pretty under wraps the best we could. So, and then everybody thought they knew, and then I got kicked off. So everybody's like, "Oh, man, like, oh, we thought you won. That sucks." I felt one of the ones I felt bad about. I had these regulars who come into Spiaggia, super nice people. And when I got kicked off, they came in the day after. They bring me a fucking magnum of Krug. And they bring it in, they put it on the pass. I'm like, "Chef, that's bullshit. We're so proud of you. You're incredible. You're so talented. You're such a great guy. You're going to do well. Don't worry about this fucking show." Like, oh, blah. And I'm just sitting there like, oh, I feel so fucking guilty. Like, you know what I mean? Just give me like an $800 bottle of champagne because they think I'm like down in the dumps. And I'm like, they're like, "Yeah, this show, we're never going to watch it again." I'm like, give it a week.
What is it like getting fame, right? You said you're not really a TV guy from the South Side of Chicago. What is it like to come off this show and all of a sudden you're famous?
Yeah,
most people never understand what that's like.
Yeah, so it's weird, it's like weird and it's not weird. So I think like one of the, funnier moments I had, I was like it was like the final three. And I was like, I went to Whole Foods in like Lincoln Park. And I was like, check it out. I was like, got my stuff. And somebody was like, like, you know, from like 2 registers hours, like, hey, we're all rooting for you. And like, you know, a bunch of people were like, yo, you know, like started like yelling. And I was like, I felt like I was in like Friday Night Lights. You know what I mean? And, like that was like a kind of a holy moment. You know what I mean? Of like, oh, like, you know, but it's like, honestly, and, you know, I think it's like, you know, process. We where we grew up, it's like everybody knew everybody. So it doesn't feel weird that people know who I am. It just feels weird that I don't know who they are. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh yeah, everybody knows everybody. So it's like, you know, I meet all sorts of people now, and they're like, oh hey, I know you. I'm like, okay, you know my sister, you know my mom from the police department, you know my cousins. What do you know? And they're like, oh no, from TV. I was like, oh yeah, too, yeah, that's a thing too, I guess. You know, like, and so it's kind of funny, but it's weird. You know what I mean? And it's like in weird places. Like we, you know, like we were pregnant and we were going to like the OBGYN, and this girl was doubled over in a wheelchair in pain. And she looks up at me and she goes, I loved your season. And I was like, are you okay? And it was like, you know, the finale aired. So the finale aired March 7th. I'm from a big Southside family. Me and my cousins grew up together. Bunch of maniacs. So my one cousin is getting married. Is like what an asshole he is. On St. Patrick's Day.
Right.
It's 9 days later. So we're all going to be together. We're all ready for you. So we're together for this. Just like total maniac fest. But, you know, my one cousin was staying at the hotel or whatever it was at. He was from California. And he's like, I'm in the elevator. And he's like, there's these girls in front of me. And they're looking at their phone, like, oh my God, I can't believe we ran into this guy. This is so cool. And he's like, they're looking at this picture. And I'm like, oh, who'd they run into? This is cool. And he's like, and I look over one of their shoulders. And he's like, and it's a picture of you with them standing in the lobby. And I was like, get the out of here. I was like, they're excited to see like my little asshole cousin. You know what I mean? Like, so that was like, you know, just really funny. Like those things where it's like, you know, but it's weird. It's like people know you in places that you don't expect. And you know what I mean? It's like you get to like, you know, I was at what game I was at, I was flying out. I was at the airport. I'm like taking a piss, and this guy's sitting next to me, and he's like, "We're at the urinal." He's just staring at my face, and I'm like, and he's like, "Hey," I'm like, "Hey," he's like, "You look familiar." I was like, "Okay." Feels like an appropriate time for this conversation. I'm like, oh, yeah, what part of me? But like, yeah, right. He's like, yeah. He's like, I don't know what it is. He's like, you work. He's like, you work for CDW or Dell back in the day. I was like, absolutely fucking not, guy. But it's like, you know, those funny things where people are like, I know you, but I don't know you, and you're like,
did you tell him?
No. No, I was like, I never worked at either of those places. I washed my hands and left. I was like, I'm not going to continue this fucking conversation with this dude.
When you decided to become a part of the show, what was your main goal aside from winning it? Like, did you want to get more known throughout the country or throughout the world? Did you feel like being on the show would help your brand?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's a huge brand thing. And, you know, I mean, the end of the day for me, it's like restaurants are my love. You know what I mean? That's my passion. That's what I've always wanted to do. And I think sometimes people go on these shows because either you want to get out of restaurants and you want to be on TV, do TV, right? Or, you know, for me, I'm like, well, this is a great way to be able to like build my brand, put my brand out there, be able to do restaurants, be able to put butts in seats, be able to, you know what I mean? Like get people excited about what I'm doing, be able to leverage TV into restaurants, you know? So that was really just my goals going into it.
Fair enough. Yeah, most people will never really understand what it's like to be a star on a show. Because essentially you're one of the stars of the show, you know what I mean? Most people are like, there's so many people nowadays, like so many people want the attention with social media and stuff like that, you know what I mean? And then when you actually are on, you know, a hit TV show and you win it, and you just have all this fame come out of nowhere, it's just such a crazy feeling, you know what I mean? Like, obviously you do, since you experienced it, but... Yeah,
it's super weird, you know what I mean? Of just like... And then, you know, it's weird, there's expectations. People are like, oh, you're going to say something about this? It's like, nobody needs my fucking opinion about this.
Right.
Like, I am not any smarter for having won this show. Like, I'm still a dude with an associate's degree in the applied sciences of fucking chopping onions. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, it's like stuff like that is sometimes where you're just like, you know, it's hard. You feel like it's really public, but also it's like I live on the south side of it's really public. Everybody, in the neighborhood knows what I'm up to. So it just feels like bigger versions of that sometimes, but it's like, it feels like, people can lack boundaries with it and feel like, they're owed access or whatever. And so it's like, that's kind of weird. But I'm also like a very much like, I love hospitality. I love restaurants. I love meeting people. So I think it's a little bit, I don't know. It was a little bit more intuitive for me to kind of be okay with it. But also like people are weird about it. Because then some people they get that fame and then they get like annoyed that people don't know who they are. Right. They come in and they're like, oh, they know who you are, but they don't know who I am. And it's like, don't do this. This is like, because it's like they have like that expectation of like people are going to know who they are.
Yeah.
Which to me, it's like that's gross.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? It's like, that's the worst. Like, and I never want to be that. You know what I mean? I always want to just be like, hey, you know who I am? Great. And if you don't, I introduce myself every room I walk into. I don't care.
You know what the cool thing about that is? Imagine someone say they don't know you, or they meet another celebrity they don't know, right? And they have a great interaction with you. It's amazing. Like, that guy was super cool. I met this guy, and someone's like, wait, that's so-and-so. And they're like, wait a second. I had no idea. That's even a cooler thing sometimes for someone else on the other side to experience.
Yeah.
It's like they thought, maybe they never knew that you won the show or whatever. And like, this guy's just a cool dude.
Well, that was,
sometimes people get other expectations sometimes expecting that.
Right. And that was, kind of funny when, we moved back to the South Side after the show, and it was like, just like living in the neighborhood, and people were like, oh yeah, I heard you cook. And it's like, yeah, a little bit, and like, well, then people would be like, wait, you're on like a real TV show? I was like, yeah.
As opposed to what?
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, it was really funny, like watching that unfold. Where they're like, oh, holy, this is a thing, huh? And I'm like, yeah, a little bit. But it's like, I won a good buddy of mine down there. He lives across the street. He's got twin boys that are the same age as my son. And during COVID, he's a professor. So we both, I wasn't working. He had the summer off. So we just, hung out every day. Put the kids in the backyard. I mean, him would just, whatever, just kind of chop it up. And, and he's like the most not pop culture guy of anything. So he had no idea about any of this shit. He just, oh, you're a chef. That's cool. And we talk about food. And, he's an English teacher. We talk about books and shit. And, whatever. And then, like, so somebody told me, they're like, no, dude, that guy was, like, on a TV show that he won. And so, it was like a year and a half of us hanging out. And he was like, he goes, I don't think I want to watch that show. I was like, okay. I was like, I'm like, it aired like 4 years ago, Jeff. Like, it's cool. You don't have to watch the show. Like, I don't get royalties. He's like, he's like, I know you. He's like, I really like you, like, and, like our friendship, and I really like you, and I think you're a great guy. He's like, and I just don't want to watch that show, and it changes my opinion of you. I go, you think like I'm an asshole on TV? Like, he's like, I don't know, I just hear about these chef shows. I was like, yeah, what do you think I'm doing out there, dude? Like, but it was like a really, really funny one. He was like, didn't want it to like taint his impression of me because he was like, oh, we're like friends now. So I can't watch the show, and then I hate you. And then I'm like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, he's rooting for the whole time. He won. Like, that's hilarious. That's amazing.
A lot of people go through life and they don't fulfill their dream, right? They don't actually pursue their passion. They don't pursue what they really want. They just kind of take the road that is the safest, right? Mm-hmm. So for you, you're living your dream, right? You pursued your passion. You've won a hit TV show. You have your own restaurant. Could you describe like the process of getting to where you're at for people that might have a dream that they want to attain one day? Like for you, how was it coming from the South Side of Chicago and getting to where you're at?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, I dropped out of college to get into cooking. I started restaurants when I was 15, but then, when I dropped out of college and really got into cooking and serious about it, it was like, okay, I'm all in on this. And especially coming up at that time, it was like, you had to beg somebody to let you work in their kitchen. You had to work for free. You worked 1 million hours. You made no money. So it's like your only bet was on yourself, right? So it's just like, you're like, I'm going to grind this out. I'm going to grind this out. I'm going to get there. And like, you just had to have a little bit of that enough belief in the back of your head, like, this is going to pay off. Because it's like, you know what I mean? Like we were, like me and my best friend were both line cooks together. We both ended up, we were supposed to get an apartment together. I worked at a restaurant for 2 years. I went to open this restaurant. It was open for 3 days and it closed, and the guys never paid me. So I was out for like 2 months of pay, which, at that time I was making like 19 grand a year, in a really good year. It was like 2 months was like, so I was supposed to move in with this dude. And I was like, hey, like, I don't have any money. And he was like, well, I already told my roommates to fuck off. And I was like, oh. You know what I mean? So I like go to my parents and I was like, hey, this guy they never met. I was like, hey, this is my buddy Joe. I was like, can he move into our house with us? And like, we'll be here like a month and we get on our feet and we'll be out of here. And my dad's like, yeah, I don't know anything about this guy. And he's a good guy. I'm like, Polish Italian kid from Wisconsin, good Catholic kid. I was like, he's from Wisconsin, but he's a Bears fan.
Oh, right. That's huge.
And my dad was like, he sounds like an all right guy.
Was he even though?
Oh, yeah. He's a huge Bears fan. He's a huge Bears fan.
Cool. I thought you were just
so we ended up being there for like 7 months. You know what I mean? My mom was police for 30 years. So she was running the district we lived in and she ran midnight. So we used to we'd come home from work and we'd like smoke meat all night and we'd drop off, fucking pork butts and briskets for the, third watch crew at, 22 and just, he just became part of the family. But, he moved to Detroit. He's got 3 restaurants up there. I got 2 restaurants here. And he told me like one time, my dad went up to visit him and he was eating at the restaurant and, and he was leaving and he was talking to my buddy Joe and he's like, hey man, great meal. He goes, I got to say, he goes, no one is prouder of you and Joe than me. He's like, I'm so proud of you guys. What you've done is incredible. He goes, but I got to say, when you're both living in my fucking basement, if you would have asked me if I thought either one of you going to make it, I would have said absolutely not. Because it's just like, that's where it was. You know what I mean? It's like these dudes can't even afford an apartment if they think they're going to own restaurants. Like it's a joke. And, so it's like, you almost have to like sell yourself alive. Like, okay, I'm just going to keep going on this. And then, I remember when he opened his first restaurant, like him and I talking, and I'm like, he had just, bought a house, he had a mortgage. And it's like, I'm like, oh. He's like, yeah, I'm like nervous about everything. And I'm like, but this is it, right? This is the bet we've been planning to make, is that we're all in on what we're doing. And like, it's either going to work and everything's okay, or if it doesn't work, like everything's going to be fucked. Like, you know what I mean? It's not just one thing's going to be fucked. It's like going to be fucked on the mortgage, going to be fucked on the restaurant, and then we'll just start over and have to figure it out. And that's kind of like what, we have to tell ourselves. It's like going into these businesses and going into these ventures. And like, the level of, and I don't think they even think it's like, people are like, oh, the level of like confidence and this and that you have to hit it. It's a level of vulnerability that I think people are terrified of and don't understand. Is that like, you're saying, I'm going to completely put myself out there. And for me, it's like, I'm going to completely put myself out there every day. It's something I created. I'm going to give access to it to the general public, and they're going to get to have an opinion about it. Whether they're informed, not informed, whatever. If you walk through the door and you have money in your pocket, you can eat my food and you'd be like, this fucking sucks. And even if doesn't matter if I think you're wrong. It's just like, that's your opinion. So it is one of those things where I think it's like, you have to be, you have to have that pit in that stomach of like, well, what if we fail? Because that's going to push you to like tighten everything up, make sure it's perfect, push you to create your standard at the level it needs to be, realize that like, you know what I mean? Like, you just have to work harder. And I think that's such a big part of it. Be like, oh, this. It's like, you just have to be like, there's no cap on how hard I'll work for this. Like, I will just work it till it works. And I think that's a really huge part of it. And being willing to be like, I'm going to put myself out here in a super vulnerable position and like, hope the fuck this works, work the shit out of it. And I think that's, a lot of people don't do it. It's the most uncomfortable thing you can do.
The element of the unknown, what's going to happen, that usually deters a lot of people from pursuing their dream because they get in their own headspace, the what ifs, right?
Right. Well, what if this fails? It's like, well, yeah, I don't have a safety net. It's not like I can be like, oh, yeah, it's like, it's like trust fund or whatever to like fall back on. It's like, this is like, it's like, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, well, we came from making $10 an hour. So it's like, when we got here, if you had to run it back again, you'd run it back again.
Right.
And you'd start from a better spot, right? But so it's like, you kind of have to, you hedge it in your head that way. So it's one of those weird things where it's like, I understand why people don't do it. I understand why people don't want to do it. I understand why people do it once and then they're just like, get burned on it. And they're like, never again. I don't want this. And I think, you see a lot of like, at least in, my industry, a lot of chefs where it's like when you're 25, you're like, I want to own my own restaurant. I want my small restaurant. I want control of this. And then a lot of times you hit 30 and you're like, when you start seeing, the numbers, the inner workings, what it takes, the stress on owners, all these things, you're like, is that what I want? Or do I like this umbrella of, everything might be my problem. Everything's not like totally my problem.
Right.
Where it's like, if this place closes tomorrow, I just leave and get another job. So it's like, I think like as much as, I'm like, yeah, send it, go. Like, I get why people don't.
And see, that's like a true testament of a championship mindset. It really is, because putting yourself out there, being vulnerable, a lot of people don't want to do that, right? And you understand that, you accept it, and you say, you know what, if I take a few punches in the face on the way, kicks and bruises, it is what it is. But in my mind, I know what I'm about, I know what I can do, and I'm here to show it, and you've done it, and you continue to do it, right? So with that being said, being an owner of two, having a family, how do you operate day to day? Because it's not like, like you said, a chef who, I work 4 to 12.
Right.
I mean, the grind just never stops, right?
Yeah, and I mean, for me, it's all about teams, and it's, it was working really hard to build my teams to get it, and like, and that's it. Having a good team at home, having a good, partnership with my wife. That's critical. And having good partnerships in the restaurants, from my business partners to my chefs to people. It's like, hey, like I need to be able to lean on you fully. I need to be able to trust you fully. Like chefs and their other chefs' relationships, it is a relationship. The chefs I worked for, it's like, it's like, for better or worse, it's like they're my exes. Some of them are good exes. Some of them are bad exes. You know what I mean? Some of them you don't talk to. Some of them, if you see, it's like, but like, so it's kind of one of those things where it's like, it's hard, and I think it's like, there's an idea of balance, right? And like, just for me also, like understanding it's like my idea of balance is not going to be everyone's idea of balance. You know what I mean? And it's like, like I'll hear somebody who works at office say like, oh, I got to go downtown 2 days this week. And in my head, I'm like, oh, that sucks. I can't imagine if you had to go 5. But I'm going 5. I'm going 6. You know what I mean? But it's like, in my head, that's completely reasonable. But somebody telling me that, like, I'm going to go to the office 5 days this week. It's like, oh, fuck that, dude. Like, why? Like, so it's kind of weird where it's like, I got to find what works for me. And it's always evolving, right? You know what I mean? And for me, it's like trying to be healthier, trying to, to be like, I think, the latest shift is like realizing like I got to take care of myself to take care of everybody else, right? And I think that's a really hard thing, especially, this industry of excess where it's like really easy to get, caught up in all this shit. But it's like also, it's like, I don't expect to work 8 hours. I don't expect to, like do that. I don't expect those things. I don't, it's not that I don't want those or need those, but it's just like, that's not the expectation. It's like, there's an amount of work that needs to get done. Get it done. You know what I mean? If you could take the short day, take it. And that's what I tell my team too. There's going to be enough days where it's like, we're going to be standing around all looking at each other at the end of the night, and we're just still here because the night just happened. So those days, if you can get out early, take it. Go. You know what I mean? It's 6 o'clock. Hey, I'm going to get the fuck out of here. But also, it's like, you got to be willing to do whatever it takes when you need to do whatever it takes. Like some days where it's just like, okay, well, this is the day. You know what I mean? Yeah, sure. You thought you were going to be gone by 7, and now it's 10:30. You still get an hour's worth of to do. Do it. Figure it out later. And so that's kind of, like the weird part of it, where it's like everybody gets so obsessed with balance, and it's like, I think you can have a balance, but you also have to have a realistic aspiration. I don't want to have the level of unbalance of like, some of these chefs where they're trying to be 2, 3 Michelin star, where it's like, it's all consuming. I want to be a dad. I want to be home. I want to hang out in my neighborhood. I want to go on vacations. I want to do those things. So there's a level that I'm willing to sacrifice, right? And I know because of the level I'm willing to sacrifice, there's also a level I can get to. Like, I'm not going to do a 3 Michelin star restaurant because I'm not willing to do that level of sacrifice. That's, they took Kobe Bryant in the gym sacrifice, right? I don't need to be Kobe. I don't want to be Kobe. You know what I mean? I want to be fucking Nick Saban. I want to be cranking out great team after great team after great team after great team every year. You know what I mean? Like, that's where I want to be. And so, I think people get like too obsessed with the idea of balance, and it's like, there's no right balance. It's just like what you can handle. Mm-hmm. If you just want to work 9 to 5, like that works for you, you're happy, fucking do that shit. Do that 40 hours a week. That sounds nice. Vacation time, whatever, 3-day weekends. Like, that's probably awesome. It's probably awesome never having a day where you're just like, oh, shit, I got stuck at work for 6 more hours than I thought. But it's like also like, I can't do that. If I had to wake up tomorrow and do that, it's like, there's just no fucking way. Like, I'm doing the thing. It's like, you know, when I talk to other people thinking about getting in this career, I'm like, if you can picture yourself doing literally anything else, go do that. It's a better job. Period. Like, better pay, better hours, better everything. You picture yourself doing everything. Anything else. But for me, like, I cannot wake up tomorrow and picture myself doing anything else. So that's why I do this, because it's like, I have to. You know what I mean? It's my passion. I love it. And a lot of people just don't even get that, of having like such a consuming passion that it's like, you're like, this is like the amount of drive and energy and, you know, work you put into it. They're like, oh, that's crazy. Yeah, I don't know. It makes perfect sense to me.
For sure. Especially when you spend the majority of your life working. You know, you might as well do something that you're truly passionate about, that you enjoy doing.
Right.
You know, so it's one of those things. When you go to other restaurants, I'm assuming you obviously like to go to other places and eat out. Is it hard for you to enjoy the ambiance of the restaurant or enjoy your meal with your family? Are you able to separate the two? Are you assessing how the kitchen's operating, how things are going throughout the restaurant? Or can you just say, screw it, I don't need to like focus on, you know what I mean?
Right. I mean, less and less now where I'm able to like remove myself from it. But there's certain things where it's like, they're like triggers. You know what I mean? Like, I hear a glass break and I'm like, you know, like, who the just dropped that? You know what I mean? Like, and then I'm like, you have to be like, that's not your problem. That's not your problem. Or it's like, you know, you like see something going on. And like, I've been in restaurants where I'm like, they're about to go down. And like seeing that, and you're like, it's not like I'm not having a good time. I just like know what's about to happen. And this is about to be a terrible time for everyone. And it's just like, you know, so it's like, you can't like, you know what I mean? You can't turn off not seeing it. You know what I mean? Like, where it's like, you know, it's like people who like, whatever, used to be police or whatever, where it's like, they can't turn off, or it's like somebody walks into a room and they're like, I can look at that. You know what I mean? So it's like, you can't turn off. It's like walking into a restaurant. I'm like surveying the whole floor, looking at the back, seeing what's going on. But it's like, also, it's like, that's not my problem right now. So it's like, I'm okay with it not being my problem. I'm okay with it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, trying to be like more present and just like, yo, this is like, I'm just here. I'm chilling. This is fine. And if this isn't perfect, that's okay too, because that's not my problem. It's not my problem if your restaurant's not perfect. And I'm also not going to shit on your restaurant for not being perfect. Hey, that's fine. This is hard. Work through it. You know what I mean? Like, I'll probably give you another shot. But it's like, it's just, you know, it is like, I can turn it off, but it's like, you're never like fully unplugged.
For sure. For sure. Can you ever tell that people are treating you differently in certain restaurants just because of who you are and because of the show?
Yeah, 100%.
So it's obvious, right?
Yeah. And well, I mean, like, Chicago is, you know, the restaurant industry is super tight knit. So it's like, even it's like, you know what I mean? They know, like, it's, you know, and I've been working in it for, you know, a fairly long time now, where it's like, rarely I go to a place where it's like, a lot of times it's like people I work with. I went out to dinner last night. The food runner was a guy I worked with 12 years ago. He's like, oh, chef, what's up? And it's like, oh, yeah, what's up, dude? You know what I mean? Like, it's, you know, it's definitely, you know, harder. People like, oh, have you been there? How was it? It's like, I had a really great experience. You know what I mean? I don't know that you'll have the same experience, but it's like they were like doting the shit out of me there. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, we went to a place last night. It's like we had, you know, 40 plates of food and like, you know, they're sending us bottles of champagne and shit. It's like, yeah, that's a great experience. I don't know that that's everyone's experience. You know what I mean? Like, and so it's kind of one of those things where it's like you feel it, but it's like, I don't care.
You said that you would give it a second shot, right? You know, certain restaurants. You know, Matt and I were talking earlier before we had the show with you, and there was an experience that we know of, a story that you talked about in the past where, you know, we don't go the whole kid and caboodle of it, but the woman knocked your baby over, right?
Yes.
Now, is that still a place? Now, Matt, you can piggyback off this, but because we talked about this, that's a place you'd go back to and say, you know what, let me give it a round two.
So I would go back. Yeah. My wife would not go back. I don't know if I'd be welcome back because I said the name of that restaurant on a podcast, and I was like, this might not go well. You know, but I would go back. You know what I mean? I'd give them another shot. They had a terrible service that night, and that was one of the places where I was sitting in there, and I was like, I saw it. And it was like, you know what I mean? It's like watching, like, you know, you see a wave pull back from the beach. And you're like, everybody should be fucking running right now. Right. And we're all just sitting here because nobody is noticing that there's a fucking 100 feet of sand in front of us. And it was like, and that was like the feeling of the restaurant where I'm just like, oh, like this is about to go inside. I didn't think it was going to go knock my baby over sideways, but but it was just like, and then, you know what I mean? You just watch the whole restaurant go down in flames and you're just like, oh, this is so bad to watch. Like, you're just like, oh, it's so uncomfortable.
Right.
I told Ross, I was like, you've got to be probably one of the nicest, most easygoing person in order to have that happen to you and to be as chill as you were, like describing the situation. You know what I mean? You know, you got your family outside and, you know, you seemed pretty calm about it. And, you know, even after they offered you a free bottle of wine, which is fucking insulting. I don't know how you didn't lose your fucking, because me, Ross and I were saying, I'd fucking blow the restaurant up. I'd be so fucking mad. Like, like you were so calm about it. I'm like, wow, man. Props. You know what I mean?
You know, it's one of those things where you're just like one, like my wife was freaking out. So it's like, you can't freak out on top of freak out. You just gotta, there's only one of you can go at one time, right? Like you gotta just, you have to decide that. Like one person in the relationship can be completely losing their fucking mind. You both can't do it. You gotta take turns. But it was just like, and it was, you know, and I felt like the girl who did it was like, this girl must have been 16 or 17 years old. It's like summer fucking job. Like it could not have been more of an accident. You know what I mean? Like I honestly, that girl probably ran out of there in fucking tears. Will never work another day in a restaurant for the rest of her life. Like because of that, you know what I mean? And it's like, the baby was fine. You know what I mean? Like my babies are big. Like they're fine. You know what I mean? So it was like one of those things where it was just like, it was just so insane to me that it was like, I can't even like be pissed off because this is just like fucking blowing my mind right now. That is like, this is how you, and it was just like, and it was also, like, I just need to leave. Yeah. Like, I need to be the fuck out of here because this is a disaster. Like, you got to get me out.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was like also just knowing that I'm at that point where it's like, okay, like I need to be the fuck out of here. So it's like, oh, we took care of your bottle. It's like, all right, whatever. Here, just take my credit card.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, this is like bad where I'm like this like a tip on that yet? You know what I mean? Like,
did you?
Yeah. I was like,
oh man.
I was like, I don't want to like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like I'm weird about that. From being in the industry, it's like, and I've fucked it up and done things, and you know what I mean? Like, but you know, that was one of those weird ones where I would probably go back there. I don't think my wife will ever go back there.
Now, there's a movie, you know, we talked about it, Waiting, you know, it's
a
little bit older.
It's classic.
Is that something that you can relate to?
That was one of like the great ones like coming up because that was like what, like, you know, I worked at a fucking bar and grill on a strip mall in Palos Heights when I was in high school, and that was like that place,
right?
You know what I mean? Where it was just like, okay, everybody left, like, you know what I mean? Like, close the back room, and we're gonna like plate ice and like rip rails till 5 a.m. And I'm like, I have school in the morning. I'm gonna go. Like, I'm a junior. They're like, okay, go across the street and get us 10 packs of cigarettes before you leave. I'm like, okay. Let me run to Whitehead.
Oh, yeah, good old Whitehead, man. That's showing our age, man.
But yeah, I mean, that's what it was like coming up, where you're just like, this is just like a fucking shit show of people. It's such a collector of like, you know what I mean, like fucking nomads and lost souls, where you're just like, you know. But that's one of the coolest parts of it. It's like you put a restaurant together. It's like you put all these people together on paper. They've no business being in the same room together, let alone being like their closest, you know, friends, and you know what I mean, where it's like wild. So it's like, you know, just like that's something that always blows my mind about this business. It's just like, you know, the collection of people you put together where you're like, you know, like, how did we get all this group of people here to do this? And how is this functioning?
I got to ask you, you know, people might want to know, you know, they got that guy always walking around from Barstool, and he's always, you know, doing, what's that guy's name? The owner of Barstool.
Oh, what's Portnoy?
He's checking out the pizzas and stuff like that. You're a Southside Chicago guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Deep dish or thin crust?
I'm a tavern guy. I think, you know what I mean? Like, people don't understand deep dish. That's the other thing. This is like, you know, I always say, like, deep dish is like the 4 a.m. bar of pizzas. You know what I mean? It's like, you can't do it every night. You don't want to do it every night.
Right.
You know, if you're doing it every night, you got an issue. And it's like, but there's a time and a place where, you know, once or twice a year, it's like, you know what? 2 a.m. wasn't good enough. And it's like, you know, once or twice a year where you're like, this thin crust isn't going to do it. You know what I mean? It's going to snow for 3 days. Like, let's get a, you know what I mean? Let's get a fucking big pizza, and like if we can't get out of the house, we'll be all right. We can eat this for a week.
Right. It's really true.
What is your favorite food? Like, what's your favorite? If you could have one meal, this is kind of cliche, but if you could only have one meal for the rest of your life, all the dishes that you know how to cook and everything that you ate throughout your life, what would be the one that stands out above all else?
I mean, probably pizza or pasta. You know what I
Really?
mean? It's just like those are two of my favorite things still to cook, to eat. You know what I mean? It's just like what I grew up on. You know, it's like probably eat pasta 3 days a week growing up. You know what I mean? I didn't get the size by accident. So, you know, I think that would probably be it for me.
Is there anything that you dislike?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I try to try things. I'm trying to be open to things, and but like a lot of offal, like pork liver. I just like for me really turns me off. It's just kind of one of those things that I'm not really into it. Like uni, which is like a very chefy ingredient, like isn't really one of my favorite things. People are like, oh, you haven't tried this uni? It's like, yeah, I have. It's fine. It's fine. Great, thanks. It's super expensive. I get it. But those are kind of a couple. But you know what I mean. I'm pretty open to everything. You know what I mean. I'll tell you. So I went to Italy to work at a couple of restaurants. I call it a stage, where you just go, you hang out for the day, right? So I was in Florence. My sous chef, his parents lived outside the city, so they set me up at this place. It's called Il Magazzino, and they do all like offal cuts. So just whatever. So I meet this dude, little Italian guy at in Florence. There's this Central Mercato, which is like where the train station goes in. It's this awesome public market, and we're gonna buy all the shit to cook for the day. So it's super cool. We meet there at like 6:30 in the morning. We're walking around the market, and he's buying just all wild, right? So we go to the first place, it's like veal balls. We go to the second place, it's like pig intestine. We go to the third place, you know what I mean? And it's like I a little Italian, but like basically you go to a place and I'd be like, like what's that? And you'd be like, and then somebody would be like, oh, veal balls, and you're like, oh, okay, cool. He's got cow udder, he's got cow stomachs. We make it to this last stall, right? And I go, what are we getting here? And he's like, matrice. I'm like, matrice. He's like, matrice. I'm like, I don't know what that is. And everybody, it's like a couple people around me. I'm like, matrice. And they're like, yeah, matrice. And I'm like, nobody knows this is English. And he's like, I go, I don't know what it is. He goes, it was pute. I go, what? I go, what'd you just say? He goes, cow? Pute. And I was like, I was like, cow pussy? And he's like, si, cow pussy. And I was like,
that's a thing.
I lost it. I lost it. I mean, I was like laughing like a 12-year-old boy in this market. So we get back there, and it turns out they're going to cook all this shit for me to have for lunch. I'm like, me. It's like me and these two Albanian dudes are like wearing polo shirts and smoking cigarettes in the kitchen. Chain smoking. They're just like, this is good stuff. Yes. And I was like, yeah, for sure, guys. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's so fucking. We get back there, they like take the cow pussy, they cut it up, throw it in a pot, onions, peas, and they like cook it forever. And this pot is just like gelatinous. Like gelatinous. So like 3 hours later, they're like, andiamo. And I'm like, what do we do now? They're like, try it. Give me a big spoonful. And I'm just like, and pound it down. I'm just like, oh, yeah. They're like, it's nice, right? And I'm like, oh, this is horrible. Like, you know what I mean? And I'm just like, oh, yeah, it's great. But, like, so full from our day, guys.
Yeah.
Like, you guys do this.
You didn't eat a lot of it, though?
No, dude, one spoonful, and I was toast. It was just like, it's a feeling that never leaves you.
Oh. Joe, so real quick, this podcast is called Money, Loyalty, Legacy. Mm-hmm. What is it that your legacy you want to leave?
The thing I always heard about, I think from restaurants and chefs, there's an old, one of the OG chefs of Chicago, Charlie Trotter, and there's an old quote to him where it's like, it's not the food you put out, but the people you put out. So I think when, it's like it's said and done, I hope that, it's like the people I put out, the chefs I put out, who, the people who came in and worked for me and worked under me and, that I got to spend time with, that hopefully, that they go out and do great shit. I think that's, the biggest thing is that, that it's, it was a place where hopefully they learned and grew and just, you know what I mean, help launch them to where they wanted to be.
Absolutely. And also, real quick, give the names for people who are watching at home and listening of the 2 restaurants currently in Chicago that you run and operate.
Yeah, so we have Rosemary, 932 West Fulton, and then we have Boulevard Steakhouse on Lake Street, on the corner of Lake and Green as well.